Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to a special KubeCon EU office hour. This office hour will be discussing OpenShift 4.7 and addressing any questions you may have about the platform itself and, anything else that comes up along the way. So let's do a round of intros. I'm Chris Short. I'm the executive producer of this thing called OpenShift TV. Josh Burkus.
Yeah, I'm Josh Burkus. I'm Red Hat's community person for all things cloud native, particularly Kubernetes. And I invited the OpenShift Developer Advocate team here to talk about OpenShift 4.7. And so, Ryan, you want to start? Introduce yourself.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Totally muted.
I always thank you for the extended introduction. I'm Ryan Jarvin, and you can find me most places, usually muted in the first minute or two of the chat, but Ryan J online. And yeah, I'll hand it off to Jason Dobies on our team. We're all developer advocates on the OpenShift team, mostly on this call. So welcome, hit us up with your questions. We'll keep an eye on chat.
Yeah, the rest of us are all on the same team. So in terms of introduction, I'll just say, let's do developer stuff. My favorite language is Python, although I've been doing a lot more Quarkus related stuff. Been spending obviously a lot of time with OpenShift in the past 4 years, working with this team. And of course, I'm getting a phone call. So we'll hand it over to Brian.
So, hey, yeah, I'm Brian Tanis. I am also a developer advocate focused on OpenShift. I mostly focus on some of the platform tools, like things like serverless and Tecton and things that could kind of make your life as a developer a little bit easier. Well, I guess maybe or complex, depending on how you look at it. There are some things that do make it a little bit easier, but I do focus on those. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those details on here with some Q&A. My favorite language, like Jay's, same thing, would be Python. I've recently been learning a little bit about Elixir, kind of curious about Erlang and how that's going, and some of the different pieces of where that's used. I think it's kind of interesting. It's distributed built in, so it's kind of, I don't know, it's different. It's neat. Yeah. But I've been focused on that a little bit. Yeah, so I guess we'll pass it off to Natalia.
Hey there. How are you? I'm still there.
Yeah, welcome back, Natalia.
Welcome back.
It's been so long.
Back to back.
So long. Yeah. Hey, happy to stay still here. My name is Natalia Vinto. I'm a part of this team of developer advocate for Openshift. My focus, I'm a Java developer, and I'm also a DevOps. So this is me, and my expertise is within OpenShift and all DevOps. So CI/CD, GitOps, of course, we talked about it before. So happy to jump here in the call with my team talking about OpenShift for developers.
Nice. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your diligent duties. This is your third stream today?
Yeah, this is third. Cool. It's KubeCon. It's my time zone. Come on. So yeah, I have to...
Right. Like you gotta show up, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay. So we don't have questions from the stream yet, folks. So by the way, we are here to answer your questions. We do have a little bit to talk about in terms of OpenShift 4.7, but you can interrupt at any time with a question. Yep. And to give you a little incentive to step forward, we have some nice OpenShift 4 shirts to give away if you participate in the session. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. Ryan, I think you wanted to talk about the developer sandbox environment.
Hey, I would be happy to mention. Muted. No, I'm not.
No, you're live.
You're good.
You're live.
You're good.
Faked myself out there. Yeah, Developer Sandbox is one of our newer offerings. It looks like there's a link in chat that Chris got for you. And yeah, it's definitely an easy way to get your hands on a free OpenShift environment. There is a limited time trial. I think it's 30 days
It's up to 30
currently.
days now. Yeah.
Yeah, we just updated it to give you a little extra time. And once the 30 days is up, you can click through and get another sandbox. Usually it may be that 30 days later, we have a limited capacity limitation. So you might not get one right away, but usually click on one, you get one immediately. So pretty easy setup. A couple caveats I should point out, since we're the developer advocate team and we want to give you the straight, no BS. Here's the trade-offs. The caveats on this sandbox are you do not get admin access. So if you had operators that you were hoping to install, that's not an option on the sandbox. You can still go in and download code-ready containers and set that up on a system with plenty of RAM and CPU and go to town with that. You'll have full admin access there. So plenty of options to get started with OpenShift if you're new to it. And I'm assuming folks that are joining this call are already well aware at what OpenShift is. But since it's KubeCon week and maybe there's a few new folks, we're trying to offer really developer focused tools built into the cluster. So you have things like a really nice web console. We should be showing some of this right now. Web console with ability to manage CRDs and other Kubernetes resources, and ability to do builds and deployments on the platform, including things like hosting your logs, all kinds of great stuff to have really tightly integrated. Any other follow-ups on that topic? How to get OpenShift or anything about sandboxes?
Or if somebody's just getting started, is there a live tutorial or something somewhere for 4.7?
Ooh, we have one other place you can get free access. It's not quite a live tutorial, but the other free access area I can link you to is the OpenShift Playgrounds. We have just recently released to OpenShift 4. It doesn't have a whole lot of step-by-step introductions on how to interact with that playground area, but you could definitely go through 4.7. Yeah, 4.7 doesn't give you a lot of details on how to go through the 4.7, but you can go straight to the docs, and I'll put a link to the 4.7 docs. Pretty much do just about whatever you like from the official docs.
If you're not familiar, there is the whole concept of learn.openshift.com. We have recently added OpenShift 4.7, which is the latest release of OpenShift and all of that. But on learn.openshift.com, we have a set of scenarios and tutorials and things that you could use to help bolster your Kubernetes and OpenShift knowledge. So we have some getting started with what is a container. We have some things about OpenShift, some of the beginner type things like this is what a pod is, this is how you would expose a service. So those types of things are there. There are also tutorials for more intermediate concepts of the tools that Ryan was saying that you wouldn't necessarily be able to access on that developer sandbox, like OpenShift Pipelines, which is Tecton. That we have some news around that, which we'll talk about here in a second. We also have some tutorials around GitOps, so Argo CD. We have some things around Knative. Those are all on learn.openshift.com if you're interested in learning a specific thing with OpenShift, or some of that knowledge also applies to Kubernetes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, before we go into some of those other topics, it occurred to me I wanted to ask another question around the introductions, and I forgot about it. Just a quick round. I want everybody to pick a favorite new feature or new advancement from 4.7. So who wants to go first?
Ooh.
Oh man, I'm going to jump on this because I have a clear favorite that I really want to highlight. The new web terminal. I don't think it's installed in the sandbox yet, but we have a web terminal operator that you can install using, it's not on operatorhub.io, But if you go to the operator hub that's built into your cluster,
Mhm.
you can find the web terminal operator that gives you almost like if you've used Google's Cloud Shell, it gives you embedded terminal that you can pop open, and it's context sensitive. So if you're within a certain project scope, or for upstream folks in Kubernetes, if you're working in a certain namespace, and you boot up a terminal in that namespace, it should already have your kubectl and OC credentials already initialized and set up to have you work within that namespace and everything. So it's really nice. I'm setting up a new laboratory workshop lab that's going to use that terminal quite a bit.
Nice.
I'll jump in before someone steals mine. So 2 days ago, I guess, we announced GA for OpenShift Pipelines. This is something that I did a demo, I guess, 2 months ago, and I was asked to put together this kind of just developer experience on OpenShift. So I had this 4 container application spanning a bunch of different languages. And one of the things I'm like, well, it'd be kind of cool if one of these containers was built by pipelines, because I did one using Odo, I did one using just a general source to I, and there was a couple different lessons going on. But I was like, all right, cool, this is my chance to play with pipelines. And once I got things working and saw and I should say, I probably stressed that incorrectly, but once I got multiple pieces working and you could see it in the UI with that pipeline and it's showing the progression and the parallel tasks, it was a really cool feeling, and how easy it was once I got the initial setup in place to just add new steps. And then I admittedly and intentionally over-engineered it because it was for demo purposes. So I did across 3 tasks what could have been 1. So what should have just been stuff goes in and then stuff comes out. Like, no, we're going to blow this out to like 12 different tasks, but it looked really cool. And I was impressed. I've been impressed for months now, seeing the early UX markups for what the pipelines were going to look like in the GUI. I understood the abstraction, but finally sitting down and putting my hands on it, being like, okay, this is going to be this particular task. I'm going to reuse this one, and this one's going to be custom. And it all just fell into place, and it just started to kind of click. And then, like I said, once I got the kind of initial 2 or 3 pieces in, then it was easy. It was super easy for me to over-engineer it and just keep adding more pieces on top of it. So it was a really cool feeling. I'm not gonna lie, I've never been particularly interested in setting that stuff up. I've used Jenkins to the extent that I was a developer and I would watch Jenkins turn red and then yell at someone, and it was typically me turning it red anyway. So actually having set one up, yes, exactly. This is developer talk. If we were talking about breaking the build, we're doing something wrong. So actually setting one up and kind of putting the thought into these are the steps that make sense, and this is how to actually dig into the logs and stuff was really cool. And I was really impressed with how it shaped up.
Nice.
That stuff's based on Tecton, right?
Yep.
Awesome. So if you're from the upstream world, this is hopefully the same stuff that you're using on other Kubernetes, just tightly integrated into the console experience. So hopefully easier to use and navigate.
Yeah, and there's so much between what's in the developer perspective, or does that live in whatever in the web UI, I should say, leave it that way. Is a really, really neat UI. Using the Tecton command line worked. I can't remember what I did for each of it. It was just kind of throwing stuff out and poking around with it. But the Tecton CLI works. TKN, I have no idea how we say that out loud. I'm still struggling with kubectl when I have to pronounce that one. Yeah. So, but then dealing with all of like I said, the abstraction of the general resources and stuff like that was all fairly logical, and that knowledge stemmed pretty well from just general kube knowledge.
Like, yeah, we have a task, like that task is going to do something and there's steps, and to run that task, you have a task. Yeah, like these are specifics for pipelines, but those are things that make sense. And the developer console on the OpenShift web console makes it easy to go and build, like you're saying, build that whole step, right? Which is cool.
Let me interrupt you real quick before you go to your thing. To Ryan's last point about installing the operator adds components to the web console. Part of that demo was this really cool that I started with a vanilla cluster and then navigated to Operator Hub. And obviously not showing any of this, but if you've ever poked around OpenShift or seen any of our demos, you've seen a fair amount of this. And then it was this kind of customize your cluster after that. So I was like, oh, I want serverless. I'm going to hit install on that. Oh, I want pipelines. I'm going to hit install on that. The pipeline ones is particularly interesting because you hit install, and as I was talking over it, the pipelines menu appears in the left. And it's a really cool, like, makes for a great demo because you're like, ta-da, we magically have pipeline stuff. And at the end of the day, that's how it works. It's not like a demo smoke and mirrors thing, but that notion of I have this base cluster and it's just click, 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 and kind of customize it with all these added on features is really cool. Sorry, Brian, keep going.
Is the marketplace, a different piece of software that you can use, and you can compose your stack in OpenShift. So you want pipeline, you want a GitOps, you want a serverless service mesh. Well, those we call platform services formally, and you can install as a software as a service, right? You go into this marketplace, which is Operator Hub, and you install those platform services. On top, then from the developer catalog, from the web console, you can build your application. So you install the component that will be used, and your application will use it. And then on top, you install your application with automation for creating containers or automation to invoke the pipeline you installed previously. So the user experience really improved, the developer experience really improved with OpenShift Web Console. And I agree with Jay. I like this operator as a service, at a marketplace inside OpenShift, to build your platform as you need it. Very cool.
And the holdups there from a developer perspective, platform services are things that you can't install as a developer. Usually you need admin credentials, but I think the really powerful thing is I can install this cluster on any cloud and not have to rely on platform services that are not CNCF sanctioned platform services. I don't need to go to Google's Logstash or Stackdriver, or I can use the actual upstream technologies running on the cluster, powered by or backed by operators. So really cool to have that all show up so easily and to be available on any cloud.
I agree. No lock-in. No, at least there's no specific place lock-in. You can. This is all open source software. Of course, in the OpenShift version, we support a certain version. We back the support to the version, but it's all open source, all upstream, and it's all Operator Hub. So in this case, it's really no lock-in, and you can install in any place that you want.
Let me jump in quickly because I don't know how commenting works with the Restream bot, but someone from YouTube is asking how long can we use the dev sandbox? So it's 30 days, and someone correct me if the policy has changed, but after that, the cluster goes away, but you can get another one.
Yeah.
I'm seeing nods, so they haven't changed that policy. So you sign in with your Red Hat developer account, that's free. You get your cluster for 30 days. And then again, you'll have to make sure you back up anything after that. There's no kind of extension, which is, let's call it what it is, intentional, because back in the old days of, OpenShift 2, I guess, we had this hosting and people would use it to host their WordPress logs kind of indefinitely. And I know because I was one of those people before I was on the team. And it was a spectacular abuse and I kind of miss it. You'd think as an employee, I would get access to that, but no. But yeah, so 30 days, and then you can renew it as many times as you want, just keeping in mind that it's not an extension. So you're going to have to make sure anything you have out there that you may want to save some resources or anything like that. If you're not using proper GitOps where you've already stored that stuff in version control and recreate it, otherwise it's going to end up getting knocked out on you. Please tell me someone's going to use that as a jumping off point to talk about GitOps, because that was a real softball of a transition.
Well, I was going to ask, Natalia didn't mention what his favorite feature was, and I probably would speculate, but I'm not sure. So we'll see.
Yeah, this GitOps integration is really, really cool with Argo CD. I think this is going to be my favorite from now. Yeah.
Right.
Before was Tecton. Now it's this one. It's too cool. And lots of work in progress also to bring the same experience. With Tecton, we have this tight connection with the web console. Really, we have. If you look at Tecton, Tecton has also a dashboard. is a kind of standalone. You can install this dashboard, but it's not that in advanced. The integration of Tekton inside OpenShift is really powerful from a user experience perspective in the Dev Console. And I'm looking forward to the works also to integrate this GitOps experience in the Web Console. Because as you know, the Web Console is also programmable, is extendable via API. And I think
console, you're saying
OpenShift Web Console, yeah. And I think there will be a talk at Summit by Ryan and Brian and Jay talking about how to customize the Dev Console. So the customization comes also with the operator. If you install for instance, the Quay operator, which is an operator for having a registry, enterprise registry in OpenShift, you will have this adding on the Web Console. If you install a pipeline, you have more adding. And so this is very powerful and cool. And I'm looking forward to the GitOps integration to the Web Console, which are coming.
Natalia, I would like to say congratulations on your efforts on launching the new Learn topic area. We have a new learn.openshift/GitOps that Natalia did a lot of work to help get ready. So if you're interested in learning more about Argo CD and GitOps, definitely check that out. I'll post a link in chat here. Nice work on that.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thanks for your great help. To be honest, you have been part of this effort. I want to thank also Christian Hernandez. Most of the content comes from his workshop, GitOps workshop, and also our colleague Dewan that collaborated on making this scenario. So we are looking forward to any hints or feedback, suggestion for extending this GitOps learning path. At the moment, we do getting started and then customize and sync waves and hooks. But we would like also to touch base the new GitOps CLI called CAM, which is able to bootstrap either the pipeline part and the GitOps part. And then we will also like to mention and cover in some way, I don't know if possible in Karakora, we would like also to cover the multi-cluster with Argo CD, which is the hottest.
That'd be really cool. There's a question in chat about Tekton triggers. Are they part of OpenShift Pipelines?
It sounded right good, but right before you muted, yeah. But you went very robotic on us for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's okay now, though.
Yeah, it sounded fine. You might have fixed it, Ryan. All right.
All right.
So questions, do we want to get to those?
Well, there's one here that was related to that, which is, does the OpenShift pipelines include Tekton triggers?
That's what I was.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. When you install the operator, you have Tekton APIs. So you have Tekton and also Tekton triggers. So when you install the operator, it comes with a certain version of the Tekton core and Tekton triggers. So yes, the answer is yes. And we track those versions between the version of the operator and version of the Tekton upstream project installed by the operator. So definitely you can have webhooks to your pipelines. And also we have also some good tutorial on how to get started with pipeline and on OpenShift and also with webhooks. Maybe we can share it also in the chat.
Nice.
Okay. And while you're doing that, we have a couple of questions, kind of related questions about a completely different topic. We've got a couple of people watching who are OpenShift on VMware users. And so one of the questions, somebody wanted to confirm that 4.7 works on vSphere 7.
And that does.
And I think it does. Somebody wants to confirm that?
7 update 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Second question, this one came from Slack. Armin says, I was just talking with VMware about the entry vSphere provisioner for OpenShift, which is broken for them. And he wanted to know when it might be fixed? When do you plan to support deliver the VMware CNS with OpenShift? As far as I know, that should already work.
To my
No?
knowledge, it does. Anybody got anything on that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Yeah, I haven't heard it not working,
Right.
but that
Okay.
doesn't mean that it doesn't. There could be an issue. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, Armin, so it sounds like it might be actually a specific issue to your infrastructure. And feel free to follow up with a Red Hat individual.
Short at redhat.com. I'll get you to the
Yeah.
right place. So just send me an email.
Cool. Or you can ask in the Slack that you're already in, particularly
That too.
tomorrow when we have more people online for the conference. Cool. Okay, more questions.
More questions. What do we got here?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, JP Dade said that his favorite feature is Windows workers.
Right.
Um,
But there is a caveat there when it comes to networking, I believe.
okay. I have no idea how Windows networking even works.
Well,
The,
no, it's the cluster networking has to be of a certain type. I forget. It has to be the
OVN?
OVN Kubernetes one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have you ready for a long GitOps, etc. question?
Sure.
Is the new GitOps operator multi-tenant enabled? He said, they say, we've been using the Argo CD community operator for infrastructure GitOps approach with cluster-wide permissions, but now application teams are also asking for dedicated instances in their namespaces. Is there a way to do this separation between one cluster privileged and several namespace privileged Argo CD instances possible? And no, they haven't really tried the GitOps operator for this yet.
Okay.
Well, this is this question is a kind of architectural question. So usually the use case is having one single central Argo CD that controls multiple clusters. But if they want to do this multi-tenant approach, that is definitely possible inside the same OpenShift cluster with the fine-grained role binding or cluster role permission. In multiple cluster, I'm not aware of any work on that, and I don't think the GitOps. So the GitOps operator is bringing Argo CD with OpenShift Airbag and all the permission and stuff that is needed. But I don't think that it will add more in terms of this Argo CD multi-tenancy. So I think it's a question that need to be investigated more, maybe with Siamak offline or in chat in Slack. But I don't think there is a huge difference in this use case between the OpenShift GitOps operator and the other one.
So you're saying, yeah, we could limit access to like who accesses it with RBAC rules, but as far as like having multiple instances of Argo CD running for like each BU or whatever how you designate your cluster, like we don't think that exists, or that doesn't exist.
Yeah. I think the use case is Argo control multiple namespace or multiple cluster.
Yeah.
So this is the multi-tenancy. I don't know if there is a cascade of multi-tenancy possible. Something we need to explore, investigate.
So JP Date asks, what is the difference between OpenShift SDN and OVN Kubernetes, other than the ability to run Windows containers?
That's a good question, because the OpenShift SDN is based on an open source project called Openshift Switch. Mm-hmm. So this is the SDN, the implementation of the software defined network. OVN is a kind of, in our implementation, is a kind of superset. So basically OVN in OpenShift use still Openshift Switch, but it's a kind of superset that can talk also with non-Linux implementation, like in Windows, you can use OVN, and under the hood there is an implementation. In our case, is Open vSwitch still. So the difference is there isn't the versus. So OpenShift SDN is OVN because we implement in this way OVN and Open vSwitch. And thanks to this OVN, we can also have a heterogeneous computing system like Linux and Windows host, for instance. And Kubernetes is using OVN for a superset for all the SDNs. So this is the not the difference, is the context about OVN and OpenShift SDN.
The biggest context, I think, is that you have to choose one at setup time, right? You can't flip them easily or at all in most cases. So that is kind of the big decision-making factor you have to use, right? Like,
yeah, and I think JP Dade mentioned a very advanced topic, which is the kind of tunneling. I think we're going beyond the developer scope here. Yeah, but this is a really niche information, which is VXLAN for OpenShift SDN, so Open vSwitch, and Geneve tunnels, kind of tunneling, IP tunneling used in a software-defined network. So thanks for this very niche information. I hope all the developers appreciate that.
right. Okay, so some clarification around, you can migrate from OpenShift SDN to OVN, but it will be disruptive, guarantee you that. There's no going back unless you have an etcd backup to restore with the old network on there. So yeah, it's a good point. Is Argo CD the single source of truth? If yes, no backups are needed. Still, what if something changed on the cluster, some deprecation of something, an Argo CD, manifest Helm, etc., can fail? So in disaster recovery, you're more safe to have a backup via some service instead of Argo CD recovery, right? So there's a few layers to that question.
Yeah.
Like, if you had a backup or a DR site, like your service, would I guess, still be up or working or whatnot, or you'd have easy access. But with Argo CD, right, like you're still should be able to get back to the state, at least for that application or those things that were, running or managed with the Argo. Like you still would be able to access and, get to the same state because the state is in Git. Right. So
hopefully,
what is one better than the other? I mean,
okay. Follow up on VMware from Slack. How do I need to install that?
Yes, this
Bare
is
metal UPI and add the CSI. I'd like to have this out of the box with IPI. So this is definitely an Andrew.
so this is still this is still the vSphere CSI question.
Yeah. Andrew, if you can chime in on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, you showed up to the wrong office hours session. This is the developer chat, and so we're not prepared to answer questions about VMware installations on this segment. Yeah, unfortunately,
my interest typically comes in once I have a cluster running.
You need to have Andrew says you need to have a cloud integrated deployment. So either UPI or IPI, then deploy the vSphere CNS, a CSI provider, as a day 2 operation. So saith the Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, for chiming in there.
And thanks to the audience for the questions. Keep them coming if you have more that you'd like to. In regards to multi-tenancy, one thing we upgraded in the last year or so has been our support for Helm charts. That used to be just one Helm repo for the whole cluster. And now you can do multiple Helm repos and do kind of a multi-tenant, have one group of developers that are using a particular batch of Helm solutions, and then a different group that's all sharing the same cluster. So you don't have situations where every developer is admin on their own cluster, and then you're not quite sure how permissions are going to work when you roll to production. I always like to do as close to production as I can in my development phase. So it's nice having everything locked down and multi-tenant right from the start.
Right.
Yeah, what about the GitOps approach, right? I was thinking before in the previous show. So isn't that similar to Git flow? If you recall Git flow, right? It's a methodology of developing software where you have a feature branch, and then you change the branch, you do the hotfix, or you roll back, you go in the master branch or main branch if you want to deploy to prod. So I was wondering if that fits also this new GitOps, because GitOps is for deploying apps, but also keeping a manifest for the infrastructure. So can we kind of use Git flow in GitOps? Well, was thinking, what do you think about it? And if you ever use Git flow, do you think that would be feasible here?
I haven't used Git flow. I'm not sure about that.
I mean, it's been a long time since I used Git flow, but like Git flow, I believe, if I remember correctly, is the process through which things get committed. That would then spin up, an Argo CD instance to say, go reconcile all those changes against a cluster. I believe they can work in tandem. They're not exclusive, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, they can work in together either for the app and then for the manifest controlled by GitOps, so by Argo in this case. So the feature branch can be a branch where you can create a feature namespace where you can try the things and then roll back, roll forward. I don't know. Was a kind of idea I was thinking if those two words can talk each other from the past experience with Git flow for developing apps.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that kind of Git flow work, or whatever the result of it is. It's going to need to do perhaps phased rollouts. And I don't know whether it should talk to Helm charts and do a Helm chart rollout, or whether I should be using Knative services to do a rollout, or whether I should be using service mesh to do to shape traffic around and achieve a rollout. Right? There's multiple different ways to approach the solution there. So and hard to know what people are going to expect.
Right. And always the answer is use the method that works best for you. Right? Like you and your org, right? You have to come to a consensus there around methodologies. And it could be that, you decide to go with Git flow and Tecton and, or pipelines, and off you go. And that's a viable solution. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, yeah, like what kind of granularity of levers and tweaks do you need? Like, do you need the ability to, automatically scale this application based on services that are coming in? It's going to be up to what level of, tweaks that you need for that application and, what you need. So exactly, like hard to exactly say. It depends on the application, right?
So Will Morrison points out, honestly, a Git flow driven deployment would be pretty resource consuming, as you can have many branches living in parallel, depending on the size of your team or your project, of course. And, when it comes to GitOps, we think about, here's the application, here's the infrastructure, they're in repositories of their own, and they get deployed together with Argo kind of deal, and everything gets reconciled accordingly. So, I mean, that's a good point. If you do have a lot of Git flow driven type things, it could be a hard switch, right? Like there is that possibility always.
Yeah, good point, Will. Yeah. I think we need to consider also this. Well, coming on the 4.7 experience, I think maybe Brian can say more about it. I think the user experience across serverless and eventing improved a lot. It's very easy to create an application, serverless app, connecting to a Kafka stream and react to some events. So this is something we saw in previous version, but now it's more easy to set up all this topology, which are kind of complex, but from the OpenShift web console looks very easy. And I know Brian tried out also something about it.
Yeah. So too, well, I guess to finish the first question to begin with, two of my favorite features, I guess I didn't mention that, would be the serverless updates that we have on building out the whole eventing stream. So we have been adding this into the OpenShift developer portion of the web console, incrementally, right? So OpenShift serverless came out serving the aspect of scaling up an application and handling the giving you an automatic route and things like that. That aspect came GA, generally available in OpenShift, before the eventing aspect of serverless or Knative came out. So OpenShift serverless uses Knative. And the serving aspect came first because you need to run your application and be able to scale that. And we made it easy to be able to build out a serving service in the OpenShift web console. The only difference that you do when you deploy an application is you click a little radio button that says, I want this deployed as serverless instead of as a traditional Kubernetes deployment. Very easy, right? Like that's what I would expect. If I'm looking at the web console, it's very simple. Like I don't even have to think about it. This is now a serverless service. That then allows me to use this service as something that auto scales and whatnot, but it also allows me to hook up to events. So serverless eventing, which enables event-driven development, which I think is insanely interesting. And that's probably my favorite aspect of everything that comes with OpenShift and OpenShift 4.7 was the way that we could build that eventing flow in the developer console. So we could basically go through, and instead of having to work with YAML or having to work with the KN CLI, which is good, but instead of having to work with the command line, I could use the OpenShift web console to build out an eventing flow that will connect up to Kafka using the Kafka connector that is now generally available or included in the OpenShift, latest update and whatnot. So we will be able to connect to Kafka and be able to hook up and see messages come to our application and maybe wake that application up if we get a Kafka message, do some stuff, and then it'll go back to sleep and use no resources, right? So like event-driven development enables that type of flow. And I think that is probably the most interesting aspect. The other thing that I think also is interesting, which I know we talked about earlier, well, we didn't talk about it, but it was in the stream earlier, was the OpenShift Service Mesh 2.0. Like that came out around 4.7. There's been a couple updates and stuff since then, but they changed some of the architecture of Istio and made it a little bit different. Instead of going from microservices and split up, it's all together in one more monolith that's easier to manage for these particular set of services, right? So they went a little too far and they kind of backed it down. There's also some other things that are interesting. Kiali makes it easier to monitor things that are going on in the service mesh. And there's a lot of updates there that make it easier. Some of those things come through to the OpenShift web console, and you could see kind of, hey, this namespace has service mesh enabled, or we can enable it easier or whatnot through the web console. And that's included, and that's pretty awesome and interesting. So anyways, yeah, those two things, I guess, would be my main. Event-driven development, it's a lot easier in OpenShift now. Instead of working with YAML, I could work with that web console. And then, yeah, serverless. Or service mesh, sorry, the updates with service mesh.
To supplement your favorite feature, Sebastian really likes being able to set traffic splitting rates for Knative revisions directly in the console.
That makes so Sebby and I were joking around back and forth about being developer advocates and demos, and that makes for a really cool demo. When I've actually presented the one that the Dev Nation guys use, where you've got the blue, green, and color, yellow, different backgrounds, and then you just start flipping rules, and all of a sudden it's going Firefox. People are going to one place, or like he says, having the revisions start to slowly creep in, and you see like you jam on refresh a bunch of times and you see green once in a while, and then you just kind of shift the ratios, and all of a sudden that's coming through a lot more. It makes for a really cool, very visual demo. And that's just on top of the feature itself being useful.
Actually, so I have a technical question for that. Is what's doing the splitting there? Is Knative doing that itself, or is that actually being handled by Istio under the hood?
So initially, it was handled by Istio, but now it is. It starts with a C. I can't think of what it is.
Contour?
Contour. That's what it's called. It's Contour.
Okay.
So it still uses Envoy. Istio's using Envoy. It's just a more simplified control plane. And yeah, it's using Project Contour for that.
Nice. So we do have a question here. It involves one of my favorite features, quick starts. I think this is available in 4.8, but don't hold me to that. Can I make my own custom quick starts?
Yes. So Ryan might be able to answer a little bit better. I don't know which of us have had the experience yet to play with them, but the general premise is, I hate mentioning operators as much as we do, but at the end of the day, there's a feature in Kubernetes called custom resources. And if you haven't seen it, instead of just using things like pods and deployments and the built-in resources, you can define your own. For quick starts, there's a new resource type. I'm going to assume it's called quick start or something very similar. You create a new one of those. So it's a YAML-based resource like any other, and that contains the information, all of the information for the individual quick start. So being able to just write that YAML file, get it deployed, and then your quick start appears in there. That's actually just how they're written in the first place. Like, there's no fancy thing that we're doing to inject the quick starts above and beyond just writing those and then packaging them in some way. The other thing is that we're still, we're working in particular with that team to enhance it going forward. So what you're seeing today is definitely not the end state. We're looking to add things like these pre and post steps. So as you come into your quick start, is it going to set an initial state on top of your cluster or something like that? Grouping mechanisms to be able to say these 5 belong to a particular path or something like that. Which is a very long answer to, can you write your own? Yeah, we actually expect companies and users are going to say, hey, this is training material for our new employees, or this is the kind of thing you'd want to use to bootstrap a project or something like that. Like, there's a number of reasons why companies would want to use them outside of what we would do from a teaching and advocacy type perspective. Right. Ryan, sanity check me. Did I misspeak on any of that?
No, that sounds totally correct. These quick starts will show up as a card or a tile in the OpenShift dashboard when you go to create new content. And if you were, as an organization, very opinionated on how people should do their rollouts, whether they should use Istio or not, you could potentially type all that information into a quick start and then tell people prescriptively, here's what you need to click on next. You could even highlight different UI components and say, head on over to the developer perspective, and there you'll find all of your developer folk, kind of direct them down a guided path. So yeah, quick starts are a new feature, great opportunity for helping encourage folks to take the correct next steps. Kubernetes can have a lot of terminology and a lot of things to learn. So helping people have kind of guided next steps is potentially a huge help for them.
So the quick starts can only be, it's just steps of how to do something. And then the person has to go through and, go do them to follow the thing. Like it won't do any automation or whatnot on the cluster. So if you want, them to create a namespace or whatnot, they have to go physically create it, right?
Yeah, but keep in mind though, there are ways to reference, or at least they're coming. There's the intention of having it be able to flip around the UI for you. So click here to start the create namespace process, and it'll bring you into that UI. At least that's the intention. I'm not quite sure whether that is there today. And let me ask the follow-up question. Can we hope that someday we see quick start features as Katacoda has? Funny you mentioned that, because our team is obviously very interested in that. And it's one of the reasons why I mentioned we've been so heavily involved with that team, because we've got all this experience writing quick starts, and we were very quick to be like, okay, these are the kind of things we can do today. I don't think it necessarily needs to map one-to-one, where, I think one of the most dangerous things you can say is like, we've always done it this way. And I think, not necessarily saying, well, this exists in Katacoda, it needs to exist in Quick Start, but us being able to come in and say, hey, these are the types of things we've done, and these are the types of problems we've had to solve, is influencing that further direction. So non-committal to say we're not going to see the exact, or not committal to say we're going to see the exact same features or parity or anything like that, but the intention is to be able to do the same sorts of things we do with Quick Start in terms of depth, in terms of just teachability. Like if that's what we do as this advocacy role. So we have very strong opinions on what we think we should be able to have a user be able to self-drive, because the four of us plus the one team member who's not here don't scale beyond just us humans. So we're really invested in this idea of how can we make this self-service content as powerful and as flexible as possible.
Right. And Ryan points out in chat, quick starts plus web terminal operator, you're getting almost to that point, right? Like pretty
Almost
quickly.
there, yeah.
So there's a question
and you
here.
could have that installed.
No, go ahead,
Oh,
Ryan. Sorry.
you could have that installed on any cluster, really. That's going to be available as part of the getting started experience on Code Ready containers. So if you get Code Ready containers or even Sandbox, you should be able to see some of those quick start tiles that Red Hat has pre-populated in there. But yeah, that's definitely something you can customize and give specific getting started information to folks in your users of your clusters, for sure.
And there's a question here I'm asking Christian in our Slack about SSO auth, SSO auth. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say, but it is. So I will get back to you on that. About the web terminal operator, is there a per developer file storage solution, like a user home directory, allowing each dev to have its own settings, command history, whatever? It's a good question.
Ryan, you're muted.
Thanks.
There was so much amazing things that happened in there. One is you look so animated and confident starting at that answer. And then when I pointed that out, your expletive you said as you realized it. And then the 1 second, here I go again, which phenomenal. This is why I'm glad we have voice instead of just podcast, because that kind of visual thing makes this sort of.
All right. Yeah. So I pasted in a link to how you can customize this web terminal operator. You can add a volume mount, and you can customize the default terminal image. Currently, you can only set one console image cluster wide. In the future, it may be possible for you to set different command line console, the image that we use for that console environment. You might be able to swap that out maybe per namespace, but currently you only define one command line image for your whole cluster. But you can also add volume mounts, so folks get a home directory where they can add their own binaries in there potentially.
So I'm sorry, who asked the SSO OAuth question? The SSO OAuth solution will be in a future version, looking late 4.8 or really 4.9 timeframe, around August-ish, maybe. So again, that's a future date. It could slip, it could move forward, who knows? Yeah. And then someone was asking, is there a cookbook or some sort of text on OpenShift pipelines going to be made of some sort? I feel like there's a lot of learning things with Tecton on O'Reilly, but
Yeah.
not necessarily a book.
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe there is something that there's some
Yep.
editors that are working on.
Yeah, Natalia, you're working on a pipelines book?
One specifically.
No, I'm working on the Modernizing the Enterprise Java book, but it's not related to pipeline. So for pipeline, for Tecton specific, I don't think there is any work in progress from our team. As far as I know, there is a work in progress for sure for developers on OpenShift. But for pipeline, I'm not aware of any work from us.
Yeah,
There's
Joel
definitely
Lord.
some.
Go ahead.
Learn.OpenShift has some content there. I've updated the content to 4.6, OpenShift 4.6. So you should see some relatively recent pipelines content. If you find books on Tecton from anyone else in the cloud native space, it ought to apply. You'll just have a nicer UI if you show up and visit the OpenShift console.
Exactly. Yeah, we could start with the Tecton CLI cheat sheet. That would be great. Isn't there one already? I don't know. Let's check opensource.com. I feel like that'd be the place, or enable sysadmin maybe.
The cheat sheets would be on developers.redhat.com.
Got it.
I don't know why I said that so like without making it a sales pitch. So the cheat sheets Sebby's referring to, developer.redhat.com has an entire section of cheat sheets. Scrolling through right now, there's Kubernetes. I know I've written one on Builda. There's one on Podman. That I don't know if one already exists today, but if not, it's definitely something we can write. Those I actually really enjoy writing. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's kind of
straight to the point.
Yeah, low effort, high impact kind of activity for sure.
I wouldn't call it low effort. I would say I don't have to get my fluffy writing voice on to get right to the point of a cheat sheet.
That's what I
which
mean,
is very
right?
nice.
Like you don't have to worry about English. Let's see, the Tecton on OpenShift getting started. Okay, thank you for dropping that in there, Natalia.
Okay, yeah, I think we're actually answered most of the questions. Yeah, and we're at time. It is the end of the KubeCon day, particularly for those of us who got up for the beginning of the KubeCon day.
Yes.
He says with absolutely no bitterness about doing
none whatsoever, right? Like.
So thanks everybody for joining us. I posted some links in the chat because we're going to have a whole bunch more office hours this KubeCon week. Yep. Also for people who participated in the session, you can claim your OpenShift 4 shirt. And so I pasted that link in there. Thank you so much for joining us and answering everybody's OpenShift questions.
Yeah, been really great. I'm glad to have this one like in the can, ready to be refreshed and shared with everybody at any given moment. So yeah, this is already available on YouTube. If you're not aware, the OpenShift YouTube page is here. Let me type in the archive shortcut, and you can literally learn everything we've done for the past year and one day live streaming from that link right there.
Wait, I know we're out of time, but year and one day. Was yesterday literally
the first birthday of OpenShift TV. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
530 hours of content in 247 days.
And one pandemic.
Yep.
Just one.
Just one. All right, folks. Thank you so much, audience. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, everybody here. I greatly appreciate all of you. And we are going to sign off for the day here on OpenShift TV. And Josh is going to go take a nap or whatever Josh does. Take it easy out there. Stay safe. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.